I had the white pieces in this game, and it was a really roller coaster ride. So let's buckle up and let's see how it went. So I started with the move e4. My opponent responded with c6. Now this is called the Caro Kann defense. It's a very well known defense for black. The point being, when I put the second pawn in the center with d4, he goes d5, right? So he's supporting his central pawn with a flank pawn. I have two pawns in the center, and game will go on. Now here there are many variations. I can take the pawn, he can take back. This is known as the exchange variation. Or I can simply ignore this attack and reinforce the pawn with something like knight c6, bishop d3, and so on. So, or I could just push the pawn forward, which is what I did. This is known as the advanced variation. Now here the main line goes bishop to f4, f5. What am I saying? See, it's a blooper, but it's okay. I'm going to include it. Sorry, bishop to f5 is the main line. The idea being, once you get this bishop out, then and only then you go c4, c5, and then get your pawn out. This way, when you get this pawn out, this bishop won't be blocked in. But my opponent goes for an immediate c5, inviting me to capture the free pawn in the center, which I decline. I declined it because once, if I were to make this trade, let's say this, my opponent would go e6, get this pawn back. This will be a long-term weakness. The pawns are split, and it'll take me a while to reinforce these pawns. By the time, let's say I reinforce this pawn, right? It's just my opponent can immediately go here. For example, this, and it's a serious trouble here. The engine always prefers black in such a position. So instead of doing that, I developed the knight. Now this reinforced both these pawns, not that way, this one and this one. So should be a good move. My opponent takes the pawn in the center, and I take back with the knight. So far so good, relatively normal. The engine gives a small advantage to white, but it's not easy to figure out why. So my opponent goes knight c6, developing a knight to the center of the board, and I pin it by playing bishop b5. Bishop b5 pins this knight to the king. The knight can't move. It's illegal. And this knight is already under attack by my knight. So one way to overcome this is to put the black bishop on d7, which is what my opponent did. I took the knight, and the best move by black is to take the knight with the bishop, not with the pawn. The idea being, these two pawns stay together, and having a protected outside pawn is important. Whereas the way my opponent did it, this pawn becomes isolated. It has no friends. The rook has to stay guarding this pawn, and I'll simply retreat my bishop, and well, the engine says black is at a slight advantage, but I would not play black in this position. I would not play with this weak pawn. So black proceeds to play e6. I castle. Black gets his bishop out to c5. Bishop to c5 is a good move. However, the engine wanted to go... What did the engine want in this position? Let me see. The engine wanted knight e7. Yeah, no human will play this move. It's like, why would you put knight in the way of your queen and the bishop? Right? I mean, it's just absurd. Anyway, my opponent did the more human thing, pinning this pawn to the king, and I moved the king by one square. Apparently this was not the way to go. Queen c7 is black's move. Apparently queen g4 was the way to go. The idea behind queen g7 is that this pawn is weak because of this bishop coming out. So you go and target it immediately, and it's difficult to guard the pawn. Like, yeah, you can push this pawn forward, but right now I'll place my bishop here, and good luck castling here. Now the engine gives Sorry, this is just funny. Like if I do this, the knight will take the bishop and attack the queen. So this is just a free bishop. Don't do that. Don't do this ever. The reason why this is +8 is because of queen to e2. Yeah, nobody would have seen this in a game. So let's go back to the human moves, which is king h1, getting out of this pin. Now this pawn is free to move forward. It won't be illegal, and it can't be captured because the rook is guarding it, right? So my opponent gets the knight out to e7, which the engine wanted earlier, but the way my opponent did it, his bishop is now developed and active. Yeah, I go ahead with pushing this pawn, supporting my other pawn in the center. This guards this, well protected by the bishop and the rook, and my opponent plants his knight in the center. Now this is a very annoying knight. It's guarded by the pawn. The only way to boot it out is to commit the other pawn here, which is what I did. But as you can see, the engine starts going, hey, black is at an advantage here because knight e3 is coming. Now knight e3 is a fork. It forks my king, queen and rook. And the only way to get rid of this knight is to trade it off for my dark squared bishop. It's really annoying. I love bishops more than knights. But yeah, now this bishop is a problem. It's hitting my pawn. It's well into my territory. Also, queen h4 is a possibility. And these are the dark squares that are getting exploited here. So I'm in trouble here. I didn't know it when I was playing the game. But it's not so easy to understand how to go forward. So yes, I planted my knight here, and now white claims even more of an advantage. Apparently I had to play what? Queen e1, attacking this bishop. Even then it's a 0.7 advantage, so screw that. So I go knight to d2. You can take, I'll take back, but it's not the point. And my opponent arrives with his queen on h4. Like I said earlier, queen h4 is an idea. But as soon as queen h4 comes on board, the engine goes minus 0.35. The advantage is almost gone. That's the crazy thing, that the idea which has the most attacking threat is not the best idea. Apparently black had to go... What? Black had to go g5. Attacking this pawn. If I take, you take this pawn with the queen, and it's really difficult to defend against the queen taking this pawn. Yeah, I could defend, the pawn is defended. You can't go here because, right, the bishop will take. Also, this knight is really hanging now. The only way to save this knight is to move it and attack the queen, at which point this pawn will no longer be defended and the queen can take this pawn, and it's really annoying to play this position as white. So yeah, I landed myself in some trouble here, but my opponent didn't know how to take advantage of it, and instead he goes for the instant queen h4, and I give up the pawn anyway. Right, the best move here is to bring the rook here. Rook f3 defends this pawn from capture against capture from the bishop. It gives away this pawn temporarily, but if you grab this pawn, then the bishop's hanging. Or if you grab this pawn, again the bishop's hanging. The bishop has to go all the way back to b6. And then I plug the gap with rook to g3. Yeah, I missed that. Instead I hung the pawn, which my opponent gladly takes. Free pawn in the end of the day, and it's -2. It's worse. Even though I'm just a pawn down, it's -2. It's almost as if I'm 2 pawns down. That's what -2 means. Each pawn is worth a point. Did you know that? You learned something. Okay. I moved this knight out of harm's way. It was actually defended well, but that's not the point. The point of moving this knight out was to protect this pawn with my rook. The bishop can take, I can take back with the rook. But there's another idea. You see, in this position, the queens didn't see each other. Now the queens do see each other. They're having a staring contest. This queen is well protected by the rooks. This queen is completely hanging, and it does hang. The evaluation completely takes a U-turn, and it's plus 10. It's plus 10 because of only one move, and that move is queen takes queen. It's a free queen. Now yes, you could take the knight and I could take the bishop. It will be a fair trade. I'm down like 2 pawns for the queen. Come on, a queen is a queen, guys. And of course my opponent proceeds to take the knight. I take back with my queen. And my opponent castles into mate in 8. At this point, there is a forced checkmate. It's not just an advantage to white, it's a forced mate. The sequence goes bishop takes pawn, king captures, rook f3 with the idea of going rook to h3 with ladder mate, f6 attacks the queen. I take rook f7, defends again this pawn being captured with mate. Rook h3 check. King has to go here. Rook g1. Oh, sorry. Get the other rook here. My bad. My bad. Then d4. There's no way to guard against mate now. And I sacrifice the queen. The rook has to take. This rook will capture back with check. King has only one square. This is blocked. These two are blocked by the rook. King only has this square. Rook h8 is ladder mate. And this rook is protected by the pawn. Yep, forced mate in 8. Didn't see that. But instead, oh, rook f4 is even faster. Nah, never mind. It was mate in 8 anyway. Why is this mate in 10 now? Anyway, let's move forward. That didn't happen in the game. I moved the rook first to g1, creating this checkmate threat. If you play g6, it's plus 22, and every other move is mate in 1. So my opponent plays g3, which is the best move, like I said. And I planned my queen here. Now this queen is a permanent problem. It's hitting the rook. Oops, not that way. This way. I can't take the rook yet because it's defended well. But the idea is to double up on this file and put serious pressure on this pawn. The pawn already has 3 pieces staring at it. The rook, the queen and the bishop. It's under serious fire. Which is why my opponent tries to cut off the vision of one of the pieces by playing the move f5. Now you notice that this pawn has moved 2 squares, right? You may think that it has avoided the capture of this pawn. But that's the special rule in chess. It's called the en passant, because whenever there is a pawn guarding the square in front of a pawn that hasn't moved yet, like this in this move, this pawn can't come forward because this pawn is guarding this square. So if it comes forward, I'll take it. Right? Whenever there's a pawn guarding a square in front of a pawn that hasn't moved yet, and that pawn moves 2 squares, then I can capture that pawn as if it's on the square that's being guarded. I mean, look at this. It looks like a computer glitch. I'm moving to a square which has no piece, and yet a piece behind it disappears. Should be looks like a glitch, but that's a rule. It's a legitimate rule. You can search for it. It's en passant, ENPASSANT. And now the rook has to take the pawn, else mate in one is threatened. These two pieces cover the square. Like, yeah, you can come forward and cover the square, but man, yeah, rook takes pawn. As promised, I move the rook forward, doubling up, but the mate threat is gone. The mate threat is gone if and only if my opponent plays bishop to e8, which is inhuman. No human will move undevelop the bishop and play such cocoon defense. I mean, they would, but my opponent didn't. But apparently the forced mate in 7 here starts with a bishop sacrifice, h takes, and a rook sacrifice. Rook takes. Well, it's not a rook sacrifice, it's an exchange now, because my queen takes, king goes to f8, queen goes to f6, king has only one square, which is e8, or he could go to g8 and get ladder mated. Like, if it goes to g8, I'll get my rook, king has to come here, that's ladder mate. So king has to go to e8 here, and I'll get my rook to g1 anyway, threatening this mate because these two squares are covered by my queen. So the bishop has to evacuate so that the king can escape when the check comes in. King escapes, and this is in the face of the king because the only two escape squares are blocked by the king's own pawns. I mean, that's crazy. I didn't see that. Well, where did it go? King GQ. Yep, I brought my rook forward instead. The idea being I'll get the other rook to g1 and double up on this file. My opponent also doubles up on the f file, which is pretty useless. Like, I mean, this is not even a check because the bishop and the rook guard the square. But okay, I continue with the plan of rook a to g1. My opponent plays a waiting move, which is e5. And here I start with the sacrifice of a rook. Rook takes g6 check. The pawn has to take. The other rook gets sacrificed, probably traded in this case because the rook's going to take. I'm going to take back, which is exactly what happens. The king has only one square, h8, and queen h7 is a mate. The escape squares are blocked by the queen, and the bishop guards the queen. So all in all, a very beautiful game. A lot to process here. Relatively standard opening. And around here, a big overextension that allowed my opponent to get his pieces active and far into my territory, blundering a pawn, and my opponent blundering his queen, and me missing mate in whatever when the king castled, but also the en passant, doubling up my rooks, sacrificing one of them, and delivering mate on h7. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next game.